How long does it take a coffee plant to produce beans? Coffee plant life cycle. You might be surprised to learn that a coffee plant takes around 4 years to produce beans. That's right, it's not an overnight process. In fact, several factors go into how long it takes for a coffee plant to mature and produce beans. Let's take a closer look. The process of how a coffee plant develops is far more complicated than how long it takes for a coffee plant to produce beans. In fact, a coffee plant's life cycle depends on many different variables and can vary greatly depending on where it's planted. What is a coffee plant? The coffee plant, also known as coffee, is a flowering plant that produces the coffee beans we know and love. There are over 60 species of coffee plants, but the two most popular ones are arabica and robusta. Coffee plants can be found in tropical regions worldwide, like Africa, Asia, and South America. The coffee plant usually grows to about 10 feet tall, but can grow up to 20 feet tall in some cases. Coffee plants take about 3 to 5 years to mature and produce coffee beans. Once the plant grows, it will have white flowers that turn into green berries. These berries will turn red or purple when they are ripe and ready to be harvested. Each berry contains 2 seeds, also known as coffee beans. After the berries are picked, they are hulled and dried to remove the outer layer of the fruit. The final step is roasting the beans to create that signature coffee flavor we all know and love. It can take up to 5 years for a coffee plant to produce beans. The coffee plant has flowers that are pollinated by bees. Once the flowers are pollinated, the coffee plant produces fruits called coffee cherries. It takes about 9 months for the coffee cherries to mature. Once the cherries are ripe, they are harvested, and the beans are extracted. It takes approximately 3 to 4 years for a coffee plant to produce beans. The coffee plant begins bearing fruit, coffee cherries, after about 18 months to 2 years. Once the coffee cherries mature, they are hand-picked, and the beans are extracted. The coffee beans are then cleaned, roasted, and ground to create the finished product we know and love as coffee. The seedling stage. It takes approximately 3 to 4 years for a coffee plant to mature and produce beans. The first year is spent growing and establishing the roots. In the second year, the plant will grow taller and have left. The plant should bear fruit by the third or fourth year, coffee cherries. Once the cherries are ripe, they are harvested and processed to yield coffee beans. The time it takes for a coffee plant to produce beans can vary depending on the variety of coffee, growing conditions, and other factors. For example, some types of coffee may take longer to mature than others. Additionally, if the conditions could be better, e.g., too much or too little water, poor soil quality, etc. The vegetative stage. The vegetative stage of a coffee plant's life cycle is growing and maturing, but it still needs to produce beans. Depending on the species of the coffee plant and the growing circumstances, this stage can last anywhere from 3 to 5 years. During the vegetative stage, the coffee plant undergoes several essential changes. It will first grow a central stem, called a trunk, and then branches will begin to grow out from this trunk. The leaves of the plant will also start to develop during this time. As the plant matures, it will produce flowers. However, these flowers will not turn into beans until the plant enters the next stage of its life cycle, the reproductive phase. The flowering stage, the coffee plant's flowering stage, is when it produces its flowers. Although it can vary depending on the type of coffee plant and the environment it is grown in, this usually happens in the spring. The flowers are white and have a sweet fragrance. They only last for a few days before falling off the plant. Once the flowers fall off, small green berries known as coffee cherries begin to grow in their place. These cherries will eventually turn red or yellow when they are ripe and ready to be harvested. Ripening the beans, it takes around 3 to 4 years for a coffee plant to mature and produce beans. However, the yield of beans varies considerably between plants, with some having just a few ounces while others make several pounds. Once the coffee plant flowers, it takes around 6 to 8 weeks for the fruits, coffee cherries, to ripen and be ready for picking. The coffee cherries are usually harvested by hand, and only the ripe ones are picked. Unripe cherries can damage the taste of the coffee. After the coffee cherries are picked, they must be processed within 24 hours to prevent spoiling. Thank you for watching. coffeetunnel.com/.